Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of The Untold, where we're going to share with you the behind stories of our guests, especially when it comes into their success and great achievement. In today's episode, we're going to know more about coach and architect Mohammad AlBualian, so stay tuned with us. And we'd like to welcome our guest in today's episode of The Untold. We're going to know more about his story. We are really glad to welcome with us the coach, the architect, Mohammad AlBualian. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, of course, at the beginning, talking more about being a coach and an architect is something very great, but people would consider being an architect as something, let's say, more difficult. You need more time, you need more effort, and so on. So, let's start with the beginning. Tell us more about why did you choose studying architect? Like, was it something you dreamt from, let's say, when you were a child?
Um, I wanted to be an architect a long time ago, since I was a child. I know it's a bit cliche, but ever since I was little, I was very interested in how houses were put together, why the houses are shaped the way they were, and it was just interesting to see. Just as I was going to school, seeing houses pass by, and I was interested on why they looked like that.
Yeah.
Um, when I graduated, um, when I graduated, I went into business actually, just because I felt like I was pressured. Everybody in my family was going into business and banking, and I think that was like the standard. And I felt like I should also fit into this mold. However, I was always interested in art, in history, rather than numbers. However, I did it anyways. So I studied in Oregon. I did a bachelor's in business actually. Um, During my third year in business school, I decided that I hated this field.
Yeah.
I know it's a great field and people, enjoy it, but it wasn't for me. And so, as I was taking business classes, I was also taking a lot of art classes on the side just because I love it. And then eventually, I decided that it's not for me, and I wanted to continue into architecture. Luckily, the university that I was in it allowed me to graduate with a bachelor's in business and continue into a master's of architecture without
Oh,
needing.
that's really great.
Yeah, it was a bit challenging to get in, but because I had a big portfolio from all the art classes that I've taken, I was able to actually get into that master's program. This is something really interesting. I think that people should know about because people usually think that if they major in one field, this is set for life, and I don't think that is true. There is always
Let's say a path that you can
the,
actually see to.
exactly. You just have to kind of look around, but you can always take a different path. And so I just finished my bachelor's, went into master's, and my master's around 3 years. And so that's how I ended up into architecture.
Yes.
While I was in university, I got into fitness. So I was doing all sorts of fitness. I got into bodybuilding, I got into martial
Because I
arts.
mean, you're into studies, therefore you're gonna eat, but you don't wanna, let's say, gain weight. So getting into fitness is something reasonable. If that's kind of
True.
sense.
Actually, like how I ended up in business was sorry, how I
And
ended up into sports was I was always very, very skinny. Growing up, I was very scrawny, very underweight, and going to the U.S. It almost kind of like provided an opportunity to change my identity, and so I got into I started joining like martial arts classes just because I wanted to try them, and then into those arts classes, I got introduced into fitness, the conditioning classes, and I got very, very passionate about it.
yes.
And going into architecture, it's a very, very, very difficult field to major in. And so we would spend around maybe 8 to 10, sometimes 12 hours in university. And so I would actually just take a break and go into the gym just to blow off some steam, kind of just like shake things up. And then I would go back to class a little bit more recharged, a little bit more I would have a little bit more inspiration, let's say.
Yes, because it really does help when you go to the gym and you, let's say, start to do an exercise. I mean, just going on a treadmill itself would release that kind of negativity and vibes that you actually feel, even when it comes into pressure. So it's such a quiet relief that you actually manage to do and to find that path, let's say, within, let's say, your studies itself. So going back to being an architect, people would say that this field could reflect your personality. Therefore, if you are into these specific details, that means that you're a person who is really picky when it comes into his life and his details and everything. Like, does that really reflect you in a way?
Um, in a sense, for me, not really like that I'm picky, but
There's a
architect.
but, so we can see that it's going
Yeah.
to happen.
But the way like when I enter spaces, I usually just look around. This is what I like every time I enter a space. If I'm even not only inside, but architecture also it expands outside. So I'm always looking at details. I'm always looking at how things come together. How the lighting looks. How did they think about this? Was this a mistake? Was this intended? Is this arbitrary, or is it actually there's a reason for it? And so I just think about all these things that are happening, and then I just have a lot of questions. Sometimes I would ask whoever I'm. If I'm at someone's house, like what happened there, or why'd you do this, and it's a great conversation starter.
Yes.
But I don't there's a stereotype that people, let's say that architects are very picky, and there's like a certain like they're very strict.
Yes.
But for me, I not like that. I'm a bit loose, let's
Yes.
say.
So we can say today in today's episode that there's another side for an architect. Like you could be loose and just
Yeah, I feel like there's like a stereotype image for
yes.
an architect where they all wear black, they have turtlenecks and glasses.
Yes.
It's a stereotype. Like if you look up any architect, they're always wearing doing
Yes.
that. And architecture, for at least for me, you're a public servant. So sometimes architecture takes this image that it's a high art, or it's only accessible to certain people. But architecture expands beyond that. It not only into buildings, but it goes into our streets. Architecture talks about history. It reflects our culture. So it's a very deep field. It's not surface level of
Yes.
what kind of finish, what kind of paint,
Right.
but instead of what kind, but why did you choose this finish? Why did you choose this paint? Oh, I chose, let's say, brick because it reflects history. We've always used brick in our houses. Or if I used, let's say, adobe, which is like mud or whatever, it reflects history and tells a story. Whereas, like in modern times now, because of technology, there's I think a lack of expression. So we no longer reflect our history. We lose our identity. Everything is like aluminum and glass.
Right.
So if you take a building and you put it in any other country, it wouldn't matter, essentially.
Yes, I do agree with you in that much of senses because when you travel to different country, you start to see that kind of sense of culture, of history, especially if you go to Europe. Lots of people don't
Yes.
like to, let's say, change anything when it comes into the house itself. You can see that there are lots of houses that built in the 60s, let's say talking more about 16th century and so on. So we can see that people are still really afraid or don't want to ruin that kind of sense of history. So yeah, and I think we're kind of having that here in Kuwait is that people are wanting to be, let's say, more modern and wanting to get rid all of the things that, let's say, attach them to the past. And especially here in some Kuwait areas, you can see some homes that are really built in the 70s with that kind of sense, and it gives you, reflect you how people used to live in these homes and how beautiful they were. And once you enter, they do have the same sense. So we can do feel that kind of sense of talking about the time, the history itself. So it's very important. So we talked about architect and how you felt through the field itself, but when we come back to your lifestyle as, let's say, going to sport and gym, tell us, how did you end up being a coach?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So, just a little bit about me. I've been practicing architecture for about 8 years now, and I've been practicing, or I've been coaching, let's say, for a little bit over 13 years now. When I was back in school, because I got so much into fitness, I got a little bit more involved in classes, and so I started talking to coaches and wanted to learn how to coach because I saw the effect how it was on me. I want to actually help people, and so I interned and I learned how to coach, and when I came back here in the summer, there were some gyms opening up
Yes.
in Kuwait, and I just approached them. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I would like to just use your facility free of charge, but I can coach your classes? And so I developed like a relationship with these gyms where I would just keep coming back in the summer and then coach their classes. And I developed like a relationship not only with the owners but with the community itself. And when I graduated, I actually got into coaching right away. So I didn't get into architecture while was still finding a job. I ended up coaching for I think full time for about 2 years. Eventually, I found my path in architecture, and then I switched my coaching to part time. Coaching is a passion. It's not something that I do for, let's say, monetary gain. I love to coach. I love improving people's lives. It's not about like looking, let's say, losing weight or looking good. Yes, everybody has that goal, but for me, it's just improving everybody's quality of life. If I improve one person's quality of life, it will probably spread to their family members, and so like I would improve, let's say, a family, but just because like I've been giving attention to this person, delivering good coaching, let's say like good, just delivering good coaching
Yes.
in
Methods,
general.
ways, and journey. Yeah, so
Exactly.
it's not just for
Yes,
yes.
it is it's purely passion. I love fitness because of how it affects people in general, and I found an overlap between that because the way coaching gave me a lot of confidence. So being able to lead a class, eventually I could lead a company, I could lead a project, and so there's an overlap in that for
Yes.
me personally, but also like how to deal with clients. So the same way I would deal with my running a class, I would deal with a client, and people are the same in both. People are the same in general, so
Yes.
there's always this overlap, and so I get exposed to all sorts of people and all sorts of personalities, and I understand how people function, that I can empathize with them, I can relate to them on a personal level. And architecture or coaching or running a business in general, it just literally comes down to relationship and how you can maintain that, and that's how those two fields come
Yes,
together.
yes, and connect together. And as you just mentioned, business. So we can see that even business is playing a big role in it.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah.
talking more about something very important that you just said is talking about community. So you said that you felt, let's say, with the talking more about sport community, because we've seen people get really attached in sport community once they know that, let's say, for instance, that there's a good coach, the ones that listens to us, that modify our life, and so on. So coach and members do get that kind of bond and relationship that people get really connected, and I feel that sport community is really more of a family, that they stay together, and once we find that kind of sense of family, we will be let's say obliged to stay together no matter what. Like even when it comes into shifting to different gym, it would be so difficult for them to just,
100%.
let's say, sacrifice my own community here and try something new.
Yes.
So how do you see that?
I think it's the sense of community is what makes or breaks a gym. Having this strong bond that people come to the gym not to lift weights, it's to socialize.
Right.
It's to have fun. It's like there's it's a duania
Right.
in essence, and so it's they go to the gym, they just have fun, they let go a little bit of their responsibilities and just enjoy themselves,
Indeed.
and so like the class is fun, there's that sense of camaraderie, there's that sense of community, everybody's doing that same workout, everybody's suffering through the same workout, so they develop like this relationship, and so you get these communities within communities where
Right.
people always come to that same class at that same time because that's where their friends are at. They would never show up to the morning classes
Right,
or
right.
show up to the evening classes. So it's really interesting seeing that develop and how like sports or fitness in general brings people together.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more on that. We're going to continue, of course, when it comes into you being here and, of course, presenting that matter. But, dear viewers, we're going to head to a break and then we'll be back. welcome back, dear viewers. Continuing with our guest, Coach Mohammad. So, one of the most important thing is to find that kind of sense of balance. So, you've said in the beginning, when it comes into your, let's say, education, you've always had that kind of passion for architect. Therefore, you managed to succeed and to reach that by, let's say, balancing your life, balancing education, and trying to find that path. So, when it comes into having coaching as something you really have it as a passion, and also having a career in architect is something very great, but also at the same time it does really, let's say, goes ups and downs when it comes into different kind of, let's say, pressure that you face, whether it's through coaching hours or through your job itself. So do tell us about that kind of sense of balance.
Okay, let me tell you about my day. So how I would do these, because I coach and I do architecture in the same day.
Yes.
So my day starts out at around 5 a.m. So I wake up at 5 a.m. I coach a 6 a.m. Class for 1 hour, and then I would usually sometimes have a personal training session right after, and then I would do my own training. So that takes up about 3 to 4 hours. I would be out of the gym around 9, 10-ish, around that. So I would go home. I would prepare for the day coming up for my architecture. And during then, I would go to the office, and then from around noon, I would stay all the way around to 7, sometimes to 8 p.m. Doing that. And then by that time, I'm like done.
Yes.
خلاص. And if this is how I essentially do it. Sometimes I would, if my day is, I have a light day at the office, I would go back to the gym and do maybe some extra personal training sessions. If somebody wants to do something after work, I would be flexible with that.
Yes.
And so I really like this duality because sometimes like you get locked into the office and you only sometimes if there's like issues or problems you need to solve, being in the same place looking at the same paper sometimes is difficult. So when I go out and I do something completely different, my brain sometimes just takes a break. And then when I come back to it and look at it with fresh eyes, I see new solutions.
Right.
Sometimes if I'm training also, maybe early in the morning, or even late at night, sometimes I would get inspiration about an idea that I had I was stuck on.
Yes.
So it just like pops in my head. Oh, like, oh, that's the solution. Just
Yes.
just like that. Instead of just like staring at it, hoping something or forcing something to
Yes,
happen.
yes, and I believe that everything comes by its time. So, I mean, having that is something very great, and to have that kind of balance is something even greater. But I do have a question about the 6 a.m. Members that come and
Yeah.
attend. Like, are they real? Like, do
Yes.
people do come? Like, do they exist?
Yeah, so the 6 a.m. is, I've been coaching 6 a.m. for 6 years now. I've almost had, they changed slightly, but it's the same group. I have about sometimes 7 to 12 people show up to my class. It's the same people. And so we've developed this sense of community. So it's really, for me, it's really humbling that people show up for me. And so because they show up for me, I show up for them. So sometimes people I always ask me like, how do you wake up so early? I'm like, because I have a responsibility. I cannot not show up to that class. And so it's a great way just to start the day because while before anybody wakes up, you've already like completed so much. So if you get this sense of accomplishment so early in the morning that it sets the tone for the day. So you're set for, you have this mentality for success, for positivity for the whole day. Instead of like, let's say, waking up, you're late for work, and then like the tone for the day is already like just,
Right.
you already set yourself up for failure. So it's for me, the morning is so sacred that whatever you do in the morning, this is just my opinion at least, whatever you do in the morning really sets the tone for that day.
Yes. It's like how you start your day does actually show how your day is going
Oh
to
yeah,
continue.
it snowballs. It snowballs.
Yes, yes, indeed. Like, to be honest, I did try once. I joined a gym and I made sure that they open at 6 a.m. and it was available. I did attend some classes at that time itself, but then that's it. Like, I
It's
couldn't do more
difficult,
because, especially talking about my morning job, is that you have fixed hours. Like, you have to be at your job at 7:30. Therefore, it's just the amount of time that you just come running in and trying to, let's say, fit all the things together. But I mean, it's a very beautiful way to start. Lots of people would say, especially when the weather starts to become beautiful in Kuwait, that we've seen in the morning, people do jog in the morning. We can see them, let's say, in the neighborhood, trying to, let's say, move a little bit. This gives them a very very positive vibe for them to continue the day itself.
Yeah, it's very
So this
inspiring.
is something very great, and hopefully people would like to consider it more often, and to, let's say, having it as a habit itself. So having that said, I'm very sure a lot of people, especially the ones that start to know you in the gym, starts to ask about your job. Like, is this your main job? And then they discover that you're an architect.
Yeah.
So tell us about that kind of, let's
Yeah.
say, review that happened, feedback that happened after
Yeah.
knowing it.
So this is what I love about the gym, and it's really like the kind of gym that I go to. Because the gym that I go to is class based, so it's it encourages community versus like a regular gym with just machines and everybody's with their headphones and
Yes.
nobody's talking to each other. It's not like that. So it is in essence it's like a duania. And for me, I'm an introvert. I don't like going to
Oh, interesting.
going to like socializing
Yes.
or duanias. I don't like this whole
Spending more of, let's
social.
say, social community and social, let's say, events that we actually have, especially in Kuwait. We
Yeah.
are a really socialized community.
Yeah, so I struggle. I struggle with social events or attending social events. And so the gym became this social event for me daily. So when some of the members discover that I'm a designer, I'm an architect, they have their own businesses.
Right.
And so we actually get a lot of clients from the gym
Oh, that's
that they
great.
transfer over. It's crazy. I never thought
It's
this
kind
would
of, let's
happen.
say, more of a way of that communicates everyone together, like connects everyone, let's say, together. Oh, that's
Yeah,
really
and so
beautiful.
this is how they overlap. So
These are
it's
the people who attend 6 a.m. having connections. Have to keep it
Yeah.
in mind.
So I like it's really interesting because they become not only people that I coach or my clients, they become also my clients for design and architecture. Um,
So it's very great to have that kind of sense of, let's say, communication together. And it's very beautiful to see the reflection of your members, that they do have that kind of sense of, oh, you know what, you're an architect, so you can help us with the things
oh yeah,
together.
they always
Yeah.
like I have this thing in my house. What do you think I should do? Or I would just like just give them
Yes.
some ideas.
So talking about ideas, lots of people, especially when it comes into your position as an architect, do have some kind of, let's say, blocks and ideas. Therefore, you have to always have that kind of sense of inspirational thoughts, or, let's say, methods that you actually do to emphasize on a specific, let's say, idea or thought. So do you have that kind of sense, let's say, of let's say, rituals that you do in order for you to start, let's say, to have more ideas, get inspired, especially when it comes into architect?
So not really. Sometimes I just listen to the client, like the way because like I'm very interested in people, and so when a client comes and talks about he gives me a brief or she gives me a brief, I would just get into that brief. I would dissect it and then ask questions, and you just develop this personal relationship where you start tailoring this design based on how they.
Let's say they talk and how they imagine their
Exactly, based
lifestyle.
on that vision, I would take that vision and then translate it. And what's interesting in that is sometimes I've had opportunities where I am essentially the client and I am the designer. So I ended up there's many gyms that I've designed.
Wow, amazing.
So I'm the coach and the designer.
Wow.
And so it's really interesting because I see from a coaching and customer experience point of view, and then also through a designer point of view. And so when these two come together, you get a really interesting seamless design where I would make sure like if I was how I would want to be coached in this class, and so I would design it based on that, and
Wow.
from all that experience that I've gained coaching, or from all the experience from the clients I've been coaching and their complaints about gyms or
Yes.
whatever, and how to fix that.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because we do have that kind of problem. Is what once you stuck to a specific type of gyms and you like it, once you go to another gym, this is really difficult for the members to actually join and stay. Like for instance, I was associated with a year ago in Al Jahra area, and I was shocked that when we're talking about gyms, there were little and lack of gyms, and I only found one gym that was almost close to the gym that I normally go to, which was very challenging and difficult, which raises more of a point for people who have been associated in that area, that they're neglected. A lot of people you can hear. So I do agree with you in that kind of sense of, let's say, hearing and understanding the problem and trying to find the solution. And one of the beautiful things that happens for an architect is always meeting people, seeing them for the first time, and then presenting for them the models of what could happen in the future. And then once the finishing happens, there's different stage of people. So once they come and approach, I'm very sure they're, let's say, sticking to their idea, aggressive. They don't want any change. I am the architect. I know what's going on. You just, let's say, start doing the models and so on. So tell us about clients and how do you work with them? Like, I'm very sure you have different type of clients that you actually deal with.
So yeah, I've dealt with so many clients. I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of projects, like houses up to like small booths for small businesses. And you get such a variety of personalities, and it's essentially like sometimes the client thinks they know what they want,
Yes.
because that's what they want essentially. And so because I've worked on so many different projects, I would essentially, try to ask them questions. Do you really need this? Is this your lifestyle?
Right.
And for example, let me give an example. So essentially, like we've always had the reception, and then we always had a duania. And we must have those.
Right.
And they get locked up most of the year, and nobody uses them.
Right.
And so they take up space, especially and that's really important for today because we have such small land sizes that
Right.
we no longer
Like
have
they
the luxury.
have that spacious
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
So when I introduced this idea of what if the reception is the living? What if the reception is an extension of the living? You use it for yourself every day, instead of designing your house for guests that maybe show up once, twice a year. And so once they think about that, and I show them some images that we've worked on and so on, they would be like, oh, you know what? That's totally right. Why would I just do that? And so you change their minds.
Yes.
And that opens up new opportunities. Like you would, first of all, like the budget decreases because you
Right.
wouldn't have to design or even build that space.
Right.
And then at the same time, like it just opens up the space. You create a better quality space.
Let me tell you a story that we actually had when it comes into building our chalet. Was we had different kind of ideas, and then we ended up, let's say, just looking at the architect and telling her, can't you build a rounding, let's say more of a rounded building? And she looked at us in a way, because all of us wanted to see the pool, and all of us wanted to have that space. She was like, building something without angles or something is not, you have to be, let's say, reasonable. I was like, you know what? It was just an idea. We just kept it off the table. So I do really understand what you're going through. And we do have lots of great people with great mind and imagination. But sometimes it's really difficult to create them in more of a sense that could be, let's say, in a sense that helps us to continue, of course, when it comes into our, let's say, lifestyle and so on. So one of the most important thing is to, let's say, tell the audience from your own point of view, more of an, let's say, an advice, especially when it comes into taking your career, choosing your path, and picking something that you really love. Because they always say, if you love something, you are going to sacrifice everything just to accomplish it in a matter of a way that really becomes helpful.
So when it comes to like deciding what you want to do and what your career is or what your path is in life, essentially, I don't think it's set. You can always start over. You can my biggest, I think, advice would be based. This is a personal opinion. Would be just to try so many things. I was so afraid to go into that martial arts class way back when, like 15 years ago. I was like, I would never want to go in there, but I was like, no, I want to do it. I went in and I got beat up. It
Yes.
hurt. Like I went home. I was like,
Yeah.
And but I.
Poses and everything.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? But everybody was really nice to me. I want to go back again and again and again. And so I was really afraid, and you do it even if you're afraid.
Right.
So I would never want to start a business. That's so scary. There's so much responsibility, but you do it anyway. And so you just do what you love, even if it's scary. And if you don't know what you love, try many things until you find it.
Right.
Like, you just try so many things. Travel, read, do some activities.
Yes. Let's say explore more until
Explore,
you reach
explore
towards where you want.
until you find something
Yes.
that sparks your interest, and then just look into it more and see where
Yes.
that leads you.
Well, to be honest, it was a really pleasure having you here. Thank you very much for being our guest today in the Untold, and hopefully everyone did enjoy watching us. Stay tuned with us, dear viewers, after this break. with that, dear viewers, we reached towards the end of today's episode of The Untold. We've seen our guest and we've seen how amazing he was, especially when it comes into choosing his path and career and not being really terrified when it comes into having these kind of sacrifices. So hopefully everyone could take him as a role model and remember to choose something you love in your career.